Okay, so this week I want to talk a bit about stress, strategies and support. I've had quite a few people talking to me during the course of the week about stress in particular at the moment and anxiety, but also about dyslexia. So I'm going to actually talk about my own experiences with, well, one particular experience with dyslexia this week. I've brought my puppet with again because that's also been something people have mentioned, how they've enjoyed when I've included puppets, and when we're anxious, puppets help. So they have a calming quality. A calming quality is what I needed. Basically what happened about a week and a half ago is that I was doing some marking a whole load of university papers, and my keyboard for my computer stopped working. Not completely, just 4 keys. The Z, which didn't seem to matter very much, but the X, the C and the V. Now the problem with that is that I was using words like development, reference, referencing, exercise, expectations, so those 3 letters were needed a lot. Now I was feeling quite stressed for various reasons, and it just set me off in a panic. Now I manage my dyslexia very well. I've been, I'm in my 50s, I've been dyslexic all my life, obviously, it's not something that suddenly happens, and I've developed a lot of coping strategies. Now, because of the marking that I was doing, and I knew that I was coming up to another heavy marking period for some online marking that I'm doing, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is wrong, and so I panicked, but I did find a strategy. I found the most difficult strategy in terms of, it was a really long-winded one. It was not the most obvious and sensible strategy that I could have chosen. So I got onto one of my on-screen post-it notes. I found one where I had the letters X, C and V for whatever reason, and I basically copied and pasted them into a separate place for each one, and every time I used those letters in a word, unless it did a self-correct, which was great with the whole spell check, but if it didn't, then I was copying and pasting the X, the C and the V every time I used them, which seemed to be pretty much every other word. Now the next day I was speaking with somebody about something totally different, and they were struggling, and I straight away started talking about, you could use your Dragon Naturally Speaking, your voice recognition software, loads of strategies. I came off the phone and I'm like, why wasn't I thinking of that? So I went to my computer, I did 2 things. I remembered that there's an on-screen keyboard, which would have made it much quicker. I could just press that letter each time I wanted on the on-screen thing, instead of the cutting, copying, pasting, all that sort of stuff. But I also started using my voice recognition software, and that was fantastic, and I did that for quite a while, and then I remembered I actually have a spare keyboard for my computer. So really basic, I just switched keyboards, put in the old keyboard, which, okay, I make mistakes on that because it's the touch isn't good for me, however it still beats having a non-working keyboard. So there were 3 things I could do that just totally went out of my head because I was stressed. And in addition to all of that, because I was stressed, I was making more errors than usual, because that's something that happens when you're stressed and you have any sort of learning disability, that comes to the fore. So I was being my most dyslexic, if you like. I couldn't remember what I wanted to say. I was getting in a panic over the reading. It was taking me forever to read these essays, and all of that was tied in with the fact that I was under stress. The minute that stress was reduced, because I had the right strategies and I was using a keyboard and a mixture of a working keyboard, albeit not my preferred one, but a working keyboard and Dragon Naturally Speaking voice recognition software, the other aspects of dyslexia started to calm down because I was less stressed, I was less panicked. So that has led me to think about this back to school stresses that there are going to be. There will be stresses whenever we end up back at school. There will be a lot of stresses. I've said it before, I'm going to keep repeating this message. It's incredibly important. I also got an email last week from somebody who reported that this person's grandchildren, who had normally been going through so many difficulties, you've got ADHD, you've got AS, you've got all sorts of dyslexia, serious dyslexia, and they were really struggling at school. One of them had had suspensions from school because of not completing something that they couldn't do, because of the stress, because of the learning difficulty. All this sort of stuff had been going on. Since they'd been at home, being homeschooled, they weren't doing much schooling. However, they were happier, they were calmer, they were communicative, they were working together as a family because the stress was going. The stress was disappearing because there was no pressure. They were able to talk, to walk, to play, and to just be calm, be themselves. And that just got me thinking, there are things we need to be trying to put in place once schools go back. I am in discussions about this, and anybody who wants to direct message me or email me, please, please, please do. If you found my website to follow this, then you'll also have my contact details. We can have more in the way of things like forest school. Forest school is often a very calming thing for people who have got various learning difficulties, especially things like ADHD, because it's an outdoors activity. The strains, I mean, for someone who's dyslexic, they haven't got to worry about the reading and the writing, they're doing. And it's a very calming activity. It helps build resilience. It also means you have to learn to collaborate, to work together, and these are important skills. It just helps for life skills. The key thing is flexibility, as far as I can see. Basically, the education system as it is today is not right for everyone. I'm not saying it's right for no one, it's not right for everyone. There are people who flourish in the system as it is, but if we don't have flexibility, then for those for whom the system doesn't work, they are left to fail. Whatever support we do put in will not be enough if we are thinking the system is right. It isn't. As I say, it will work for some, but there are an awful lot of people who are ignored by the system. Schools who are data focused, whilst they may be finding ways to justify that and say they are child focused, there are children who are not being addressed by that, for whom education is failing, for whom education is a major cause of stress and anxiety. Now, with the stress and anxiety, we need to find ways to reduce it. There are people, I've said this before, I will say it again, for whom school is the respite. People who come from abusive families, people who are carers for their parents, people who are living in abject poverty. They need school as their safe place, their good provided meal, their place where there are people they can talk to safely and where they can feel more normal and not as marginalised as they otherwise are. So we need to have flexibility if we're going to support these people, these children, these vulnerable people. Whilst talking about anxiety, I would be very remiss if I didn't, as well as you can see, I've mentioned my puppets, but if I didn't also talk about All Birds Have Anxiety by Kathy Hoopman. I'm always recommending her books. If you have anxiety, if you know someone who is anxious, if you are a parent, a teacher of people who are suffering from anxiety, this is a book that it's helpful. It helps understanding anxiety, and it helps those who are anxious feel that they're not alone. There are others like them. So All Birds Have Anxiety by Kathy Hoopman is a strong recommendation. Flexibility once we're back at school. Using any outdoor spaces we have, not because that's about safe distancing, but because it's about good mental health. And we can help people if we reduce their stress. If I struggle under stress and I'm a mature adult who's been dealing with strategies all their lives, but they go out the window when I'm under stress. What's that like for a child? Let's think about stress. Let's think about how we can manage it. And by the way, pets help, not just puppets, real animals. There are the therapy dogs. There are real animals in school that can actually help a child who's suffering from anxiety. Thank you.